Grab your notebooks, grab your pencils, grab whatever this thing is, because it's time to go back to school. Toy Story. I love it, you love it, we all love it. Let's not lie to ourselves. I mean, the thing spawned 2 sequels, TV specials, shorts, theme park rides and attractions, merchandise and more merchandise, and all the while it captured the hearts and imaginations of children and adults alike for years. I mean, I remember when I went to go see this for the first time. I was 9 years old. I was sitting in the backseat of the car as my parents drove me to the theater, and we were running late. I'm like, Dad, you really need to drive faster. And he's like, we're gonna make it on time, don't worry. But I'm there, I'm glancing back and forth with my little plastic watch, and I'm counting down the minutes until the thing started, and I'm like, Dad, we can't be late for this movie, because on TV they said it's the first ever computer animated movie. And I wanted to yell, and I wanted to scream at him to start running through red lights, and finally he's like, okay, you know what? You really need to chill, or I'm not getting you any nachos. And, well, I wanted those, so I shut up. But can you blame me? I mean, the technical achievement was all anyone could talk about at the time. Can you imagine if this movie had been bad? The fact that the movie was revolutionary for being made in a computer was by no means a guarantee of its quality. Hell, it could have been a train wreck of a film. It could have been this movie. Oh man, can you imagine if that happened? Can you imagine if the first ever attempt at a feature-length computer animated film had looked like this? So you have to understand that it's actually kind of a minor miracle that Toy Story ended up being as heartwarming, charming, and well-received of a movie as it is. And I could go on and on about how Toy Story started a movement in the industry, how Pixar saved Disney, and so on and so forth, but let's face it, Toy Story is beloved because it's a story that we connect with. But why? How is it that over the course of 3 movies, Pixar's managed to create something that started with just a simple story about talking toys and ended with all of us reduced to a pile of crying babies? Well, dear students, that's what we're here to talk about today. For I propose there exists a true meaning that connects all of these movies together, and to prove it, I turn to some of the internet's finest conspiracy theorists for help. So without further delay, let's take a look at 3 seemingly supporting characters from the Toy Story universe and try to get to the bottom of this deep, dark toy chest. Sid, he's the mean little kid from the first movie. He tortures toys, he scares his sister, he causes all kinds of problems for Bugs and Woody. We don't like him. But luckily, all the toys come to life and they teach him a valuable lesson about taking care of his stuff. He runs off screaming, and that's the last we ever see of him. The toys go on with their lives for 2 more movies, and well, wait, hang on a second. Is that Sid? Okay, alright Pixar, very clever. You've never been shy about hiding Easter eggs in your movies before, and I know we all wanted to see Sid get what's coming to him, right? So he grows up and he becomes a garbage man. But are we really meant to laugh at and mock the fate that has befallen this child? Well, if you ask Reddit user and actual trash collector London Garbage Man, he may have you believe otherwise. In a post that has since gone viral, he writes, "Being a garbage man has one of the biggest perks that you may not have realized. We find things, lots of things. Now let's imagine you're a guy who just learned that inanimate objects are alive. What job would you get? Sid isn't effed up and working a crappy job. He's trying to save them. And Sid is uniquely equipped to fix those toys that he finds that are broken." And you know, he's got a point. I never really saw Sid as a bad kid. I mean, sure, he tortures toys, but he doesn't know that they're alive when he does it. I mean, the worst thing we ever see him do is take his sister's doll and give it a dinosaur head. I mean, who hasn't done that, right? Am I right? I mean, anyone? Okay. Then you have to consider a few more things. Sid grows up in a shoddy environment. Father non-responsive, possibly alcoholic. And then when you consider the years of therapy Sid would have to undergo after this little incident, therapy which his family obviously can't afford, and if they can, it's probably wasted on some doctor repeatedly telling him that toys can't talk, and then, well, you really start to feel bad for the kid. So maybe we aren't to laugh at grown-up Sid. I mean, he seems like he likes his job. So Sid grows up a lonely child and eventually becomes a hero for toys who have been abandoned by their owners. That's a pretty cool theory. But the question remains, how does this help us move closer to some kind of greater understanding and deeper meaning of the Toy Story series as a whole? Well, to answer that, we need to take a look at our next person of interest. Do you remember the story of Jesse and Emily? Sure you do. It's that really sad part of Toy Story 2 where Sarah McLachlan starts singing and rips everyone's heart out. Oh, come on, Sarah, haven't you tortured us enough?
In the arms of No! God! No! God, please, no! 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 No!
After we learn that Woody and Jessie are both part of a series of collectible toys based on a popular show from the 50s, we also learn that this particular Jessie doll was abandoned by her owner Emily and later put into storage, traumatizing her from ever wanting to be loved by another child. And what exactly does this have to do with Andy's mother? Might you believe that Emily and Andy's mother are the same person? Well, blogger John Negroni of the Huffington Post believes it, and he's got the evidence to back up his claim. First, check a look at this hat. It's not modeled after Woody's hat, it's clearly Jessie's. But why would he have that? Is it possible that it once belonged to his mother? I don't know. But one just like it definitely belonged to Emily. And the timing matches up too. I mean, if Emily was into Woody's Roundup in the 50s and became a teenager and forgot about Jessie sometime in the 60s, as is clearly demonstrated by the decor of her teen bedroom, that would put her in about her late 30s, early 40s in 1995 when the first movie is presumably set. The perfect age to be a mother of two. And there's more. Emily and Andy's mother both have similar hair color. And then there's the fact that we never find out Emily's last name. And while Toy Story 3 does make note that Andy's last name is Davis, the first or last name of his mother is never explicitly revealed. It's all there. It's certainly possible. But if that's true, then, wait, that would make Andy's mother the girl who heartlessly abandoned Jessie, and wow, suddenly I kind of get why Woody is so afraid of being abandoned. If Andy's mother did it, why couldn't Andy? And I thought this story was already sad. But no, if we're going to get to the bottom of this, if we're going to discover the true theme that unites all three movies of this trilogy, then we have one more character to investigate. Students, I give you Exhibit X. Yes, Mr. Davis himself is the third and most important piece of this puzzle. So far we've looked at theories spanning Toy Stories 1 and 2, but this theory, once again courtesy of blogger John Negroni, spans all three movies and neatly ties everything up in a little bow. But we've never even seen Mr. Davis, you might be shouting, and that's exactly the point. The movies go out of their way to never show Andy's father. Now, the official on-the-record reason given in an interview by director Lee Unrich is that, at the time of the first movie, it was difficult to render realistic-looking humans in CG. So the choice was made to limit the amount of human characters to a minimum. And that certainly makes sense. But given the nature of human reproduction, we have to assume that Andy must have had a dad at least some point, right? Fictional universe or not. So speaking strictly in terms of story, where is he? Well, logically, there's four main possibilities. Either A, Andy's dad is never shown on screen. B, Andy's dad is dead. C, Mr. and Mrs. Davis were never actually married, and Andy was conceived out of wedlock. Or D, Andy's parents are divorced. Now let's start narrowing this down. The possibility that he's just never shown on screen seems plausible enough given the technical limitations we discussed. But by the time Toy Story 2 and 3 were released, Pixar had started experimenting with more human characters, so the technical excuse doesn't really hold up. And if he really was around but not seen in any of the movies, why don't we see him in any family pictures scattered about the house? This also potentially eliminates the possibility of the dad being dead. If he died, it would stand to reason that they wouldn't want to take his pictures down, would they? They'd want to remember him, right? So what about option C? Was Andy just a happy accident? Well, no, probably not, because his sister Molly is just a baby, so some kind of father figure must have been around fairly recently, right? And the large two-story house that they live in at the beginning of the first movie seems to imply more of a traditional family household. And that leads us to our next bit of evidence, that over the course of the film, Andy's family is in the process of moving from their current house to a much smaller one. Which also, sets up the entire story for the main characters, but that's not important. A move like that is a pretty typical hallmark of a recent divorce. And you know what else is? Not wearing a wedding ring? Oh, or how about treating your children with lavish birthday parties, or expensive new toys, unplanned trips to the arcade for dinner, a puppy? Possibly all in an effort to keep them happy and distracted during a potentially devastating ordeal? Yes, it would seem that given our possibilities, a recent divorce is the likeliest of scenarios. So have you figured it out yet? Have you guessed the theme that connects all three movies? How could three human characters, one of which we never even see, have any bearing on a story that is first and foremost about a group of toys who come to life and go on crazy adventures? Well, let's push a bit further. I'd like to offer my own additional theories to what's going on here. Because Woody is the main character, we understand what's at stake for him. Toys exist to be played with. And Woody is afraid that when Andy grows up, he'll have no one to love him and play with him. He'll be without purpose. But what about Andy? Why is Andy so attached to this toy from his childhood? Why is it that the final goodbye at the end of the third movie is so heartbreaking? Well, allow me to present my final theory for your consideration. Woody was given to Andy by his father. Now take a moment to let that sink in. At first it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but consider what we've discussed and imagine this scenario. Andy's parents both grow up as children watching and loving Woody's Roundup. One day they meet, they have children, and Mr. Davis gives his son an old Woody doll. A doll which Andy becomes very attached to at a young age. An attachment that could easily cause conflict in having to choose between a busted up old doll and a new cool action figure. So then, when his dad one day walks out on the family, well, you see where this is going. See, when Stinky Pete mocks Woody for thinking that Andy might take him to college, and then when Andy actually considers doing it, it's easier to see why. Woody is the one thing that Andy has left that reminds him of his dad, of all the good times before being abandoned. And that, dear students, is what these movies are actually about. They're about abandonment. They're about loss. It's the one idea that we constantly see over and over again through these movies, and not just in these theories that we've looked at today. Just like we see Woody afraid of being abandoned by Andy, we have characters like Jesse, Stinky Pete, Lotso Huggins, all characters who have been abandoned, left behind, and heartbroken, afraid to love another for fear of being rejected or hurt like they had been before. It's a very real fear that many of us can relate to, and one that isn't always very easy to heal from. Different people deal with this kind of hurt in different ways. Some people may lash out in anger and choose to never love again. Some take up new creative projects to distract them from their loneliness, or they choose to help others who may be suffering from the same thing. Others make the best of a bad situation, using it as a chance to create a fresh start and maybe make something better of themselves. And others might carry this pain for much longer, buried deep inside. You see, I'd like to think there's something else going on under the surface during that final tearful goodbye at the end of the third movie, when Andy finally lets go of his childhood toys and drives off into the sunset. When he's letting go of Woody, I think he's letting go of more than that. He's letting go of his father. His father who left him at such a young age, who wasn't there for all of his important milestones and never even came to his graduation. Andy is making the conscious decision to put that behind him, to move on, to heal.
But the thing that makes Woody special is he'll never give up on you. Ever. He'll be there for you, no matter what.
Now you may be thinking that this is all a bit of a stretch, that there's no way that any of this was planned or intended. But remember that bit I told you about how Andy's father was left out of the first movie because of the restraints of the technology? Well, what I didn't tell you is that director Lee Unrich is actually a child of divorce himself. Now, is it possible that the director's own life experience may have seeped into the writing, even if only subtly? Perhaps. And sure, maybe perhaps isn't really conclusive evidence. Maybe it's possible that we're all just reading too far into this. But that's the beautiful thing about storytelling. It's an art form. And art is open for interpretation. And in a series of movies where characters are constantly dealing with rejection, heartbreak, and loss, to me, the most beautiful conclusion would be to have a character who we all grew up with in real time overcome one of the worst kinds of heartbreak of all. To go out on a note of hope. The hope that eventually we can all move on. And we can all find happiness.
Thanks, guys. So long, partner.
Personally, I couldn't think of a better way for this series to end. Wait, what? So for tonight's homework, we want to ask you guys, now that it's been a few years, how do you feel about the fact that Disney bought Marvel? Do you think it's been a good thing? Do you think they've done a good job? Do you think they've made mistakes? Feel free to write as little or as much as you want, but the answers that we like the most will feature on our Facebook page, and if we really like it, you'll see it featured in the next episode of Mouseology. Leave your answer in the YouTube comments below or on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/YumChunks. Thank you for joining us for episode 1 of Mouseology, and until next time, class dismissed.